Nobody on the face of this earth can make you feel inferior without your permission. Step number one in building a good, healthy self-image is to absolutely refuse to give that permission to anyone. Don't let anyone else put you down. If you want to build a healthy self-image, you need to take an inventory of what you've got. Any business person regularly, if they expect to stay in business and in favor with Uncle Sam, has got to take inventory regularly. You need to take inventory because your assets are absolutely awesome. That's the only way I can describe them. A number of years ago in Gary, Indiana, a lady went to the doctor because she had a rash on her face. He examined her, gave her a prescription for some drugs. She took the drugs, they settled in her eyes. She lost 98% of her sight. The insurance company paid her $1 million. Question, would you swap places with her? She takes your eyes, you take her $1 million. There's no way, is there? Lady out in California was injured in an airplane accident. She broke her back. She will be flat of her back, they say, the rest of her life. The insurance company gave her $1 million. The question is, would you swap places with her? And again, I'm certain the answer would be a resounding no. How many of you know who Betty Grable was? Who was Betty Grable? Legs, okay? That's the automatic answer I always get, legs. Actually, she had arms and a head and the whole works, you know. And yet, every time Betty Grable's name is mentioned, they always say legs. Now, why do they always say legs? They were insured for $1 million. I assume by that her legs were worth $1 million. Now, how many of you at this precise moment in this audience would like to see another pair of $1 million legs? If you'll just back up and take a good look at your very own. There's a pair of $1 million legs if they will get you around at all. There's no way you would part with them for $1 million, would you? When I see what we've already done, we've looked at your eyes, they're worth $1 million, your back's worth $1 million, your legs are worth $1 million, and we haven't even considered the rest of you. It's awesome when we start examining what we are worth. Many of you might have seen a few months ago where a Rembrandt painting sold for in the neighborhood of $50 million. Now that's some kind of neighborhood, isn't it? $50 million. And if you think about all in the world that is just some paint on some canvas put there in a very special way. Certainly the paint's not worth that much. Certainly the canvas is not worth that much. But it's the arrangement he made on the canvas that brought that price. Rembrandt was a genius. There's no question of that. And it brought the money because of his own genius and because it is the only one in the whole world. Its rarity gave it some value. Well, friends, you're far more rare. There have been 11 billion people who walk this earth, but there's never been one like you. You truly are rare. We'll never know how many Rembrandts we have walking loose. I mean the talent Rembrandt, not the painting. Who've never taken the brush off the canvas and started to do the painting. How much talent do we have that is never really used? We will never know. And when you begin to take that physical inventory and then the inventory of your talent, you realize that you do have enormous value. Science confirms what I'm talking about. They estimate that if they could recreate the human brain, or even approximately, that it would require a building larger than the Empire State Building, that it would cost well over $100 million, that it would take more electricity to run it than is required to run a small city. And yet this man-made $100 million brain could not even begin to compete or compare with what you have between your ears. Man is absolutely remarkable. He is truly amazing. And one simple example. Did you know it takes 72 muscles to utter a single word? Many of you probably think by now that I've got a muscle-bound mouth. but 72 muscles perfectly coordinated to utter a word. Man is truly remarkable. Self-image is important. And when you start taking that inventory, you realize that yes, indeed, you are somebody special. I love what Ethel Waters had to say at a Billy Graham crusade in London, England. The crowds were enormous. Somebody came to Ethel and said, "How do you account for the amazing popularity of Mr. Graham?" And Ethel Waters, as only Ethel Waters could, gave him that big old grin and said, "Honey," said, "God don't sponsor no flops." See, God doesn't sponsor flops. God doesn't make junk. I love what my close friend Mary Crowley said before her death. Beautiful lady. One of the most successful business people I've ever encountered. Wise beyond belief. Mary Crowley, with that twinkle in her eye and that grin on her face, said, "God made man, took one look, said, I can do better than that." And made woman. And I don't think there's any of you here today, especially you guys, I know you would not argue with that particular statement. He did do better than that. Lots better than that. There's no question about it. When you start talking along those lines, how many of you have small children? I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but let's assume that your child were to come up to you and say, "Mom, I'm a nothing. I'm a nobody. Nobody likes me. I can't do anything. I'm just worthless." I know if that should happen, it would really thrill you to death. You'd get all excited and you'd say, "That's right, honey, and I'm glad you finally recognize that you're a loser. You're a nothing. You're a nobody." I know that's exactly the way you'd feel, isn't it? Or would it break your heart? I wonder how God feels when we say, "Lord, let's face it, you just blew it. You made a mistake. I'm a loser all the way down." As you look at your self-image, you need to make up and dress up and go up. When the redhead would go to the beauty shop, she'd come home walking proud. I never could understand what rearranging a few strands of hair on the head does to a woman, but I'll guarantee you it changes them dramatically. It has a dramatic impact on self-image. And the interesting thing is, when you make up and dress up, you will go up because your performance definitely is tied to the image you have of yourself. And if you're feeling pretty, if you're feeling well-dressed, you're feeling more confident. It goes with the territory. I've talked with any number of educators who tell me that on picture-taking day, the conduct of the students is infinitely better than it is on a regular day. The kids show up well-dressed, they put on their best behavior, and their performance that day is better. On the other hand, up in Tennessee and Kentucky and some other places, they used to have what they called Sadie Hawkins Day. They might have had them in other places too, where the kids would come dressed up, in rags and all that kind of stuff, and they discontinued them because the conduct of the kids that day was absolutely abominable. They were destructive and rowdy, and they got out of hand. The way you dress does make an absolute difference. You can't climb the ladder of success dressed in the costume of failure. The way you dress does make a difference. Now, I'm not talking necessarily about investing a whole lot of money. I am talking about being clean and neat and doing the best you can with what you have. Step number 3, if you want to build that healthy self-image, you need to get dressed up and take care of your appearance. One of the things that's always been a mystery to me is men and women, husbands and wives, will dress up every day to put their best foot forward and look the best on their job and for their associates. And then on weekends, they kind of let themselves go and be scroungy and do not dress up and clean up for their mates, the most important person in their lives. Maybe that's one of the reasons that the American family experiences some of the trouble which they do. Step number 4, if you really want to build a healthy self-image, you need to read Horatio Alger stories. You need to read about Mary Crowley and what she did. You need to read about Ross Perot and what he's done. You need to read about Mary Kay Ash, about Roger Staubach, about Eartha White. Eartha White's story is one of my favorites. It appeared in Reader's Digest back in December. I believe it was 1974. That's a long time ago. Eartha was the daughter of an ex-slave. She was raised in Jacksonville, Florida, in a time when our country, particularly in the southern part of our country, had real serious prejudice problems. They still have some, but in those days it was almost total. She made millions and millions of dollars under those circumstances and gave every dime to the furtherance of the causes in which she believed, essentially in her people. You cannot read that story and not be moved. When you read it, you will say, if she can do it, I can do it. It really will do wonders for you. Read the story of Mamie McCullough, our I Can lady, who had so many difficulties as a child. Listen as she tells about how she was abused and how she came from a home which really was in pretty poor financial circumstances. Difficulties that are unbelievable. And yet she came out the winner and stronger as a result of it. When you read that story, you'll say, if she can do it, so can I. Read and identify with successful people. Listen to speakers and teachers and preachers who build mankind. Listen to a Paul Harvey or a Bobby Gee, one of the outstanding ladies that I've ever met. I share the platform with her about a dozen times a year. She was over 6 feet tall when she was 13 years old. You can well imagine what that did to her as far as getting along with her classmates is concerned. Has a tremendous sense of humor and laughs about the fact that she would go to the dances and the boys she was dancing with would have their nose in her navel. I mean, she really is a tall girl. But you talk to her and listen to what she's got to say, and you'll realize that there's a lady who's got her self-image in the place that it ought to be. You listen to a Norman Vincent Peale or a W.A. Criswell or a Dennis Waitley or a Mamie McCullough or Robert Schuller. Listen to the people, if you will, who really build mankind. You need to take some short, easy steps. A lot of people fail because they try to take too big a step too quickly. When the high jumper goes out to jump, if he can jump 6 feet, he doesn't go out and set the bar at 6 feet. He sets it at like 4 feet and takes a couple of easy jumps, then moves it up and then moves it up and moves it up. You don't move from 2 times 2 into analytical geometry or calculus. You don't go from oatmeal cookies to baked Alaska. There are some steps in between that you need to take, and it definitely does improve your confidence and increase your confidence when you do it. Take the easy steps sometimes. That is what happens. When your image changes, you can perform better. Down at Calhoun High School in Port Lavaca, their high jumper, after taking the I Can course, jumped 4 inches higher than he'd ever jumped before. He could literally see himself now as being a champion. Their pole vaulter, Randy Hall, set the national high school record, and he said it was a direct result of an improvement in his self-image. To build your self-image, you need to join the Smile, Firm Handshake, and Compliment Club. It's amazing what a smile will do. It's a little curve that sets a lot of things straight. And if you see somebody who does not have a smile, they're bankrupt, give them yours. A smile really does do an awful lot of things for someone else. Now, the way you shake hands is so important. You know, some people give you the dead fish, and that really makes you feel bad. There are others who will just stick their hand out and you grab it, you know, and it's like a windmill. You kind of pump it. And there are others that get in a test of strength with you. A good firm handshake is essential to the development of a personality. Now, what we're really talking about here is the development of personality. Personality is the complete list of all of the characteristics you have. It's all of the qualities that you have. That's what really makes up personality. Now, when you're accepted by others, that improves your image. Start the youngsters early. Every time I meet a youngster, I shake hands with them, and if they do not give me the right handshake, I will say to them, "No, son, give me a little more, squeeze it a little harder." And then you know what I say to them? One day you're going to be looking for a job, and the way you shake hands with your prospective employer will play a role in whether you get that job or not. You smile at them, you look them right in the eye, you give them that firm handshake. And when they accept you, that helps you to accept you also. It improves your image. To build a healthy self-image, finish the job. Finish the job. One of the signs of a poor self-image is the individual who doesn't quite finish reading the book or completing the report or cutting the grass or painting the fence or cleaning the room. They never quite finish it. Now, if you will finish doing those things, let me tell you what happens. When you finish them, people say nice things about you. They compliment you. That makes you feel good. You see, completion means compliments. It means also praise, and it means raise. I was one of those fortunate individuals who was raised by an outstanding lady who had incredible faith, was an enormously hard worker, and who taught us with a lot of Sunday sermons. One of her favorites was this one. I bet I heard it 17,000 times. I will remember it forever and ever and ever. If you were to wake me up at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, "Zig, what'd your mama say?" Here was her quote, and I give it to you verbatim. "When a task is once begun, you leave it not until it's done. And be a matter great or small, you do it well or not at all." I believe that if we will convey that message to our children, it will give them that sense of responsibility of completing it. It will help them gain acceptance, and it definitely will improve the image. Do something for someone else. David Dunn wrote a beautiful little book. It's entitled, "Try Giving Yourself Away." As I was going through this procedure, Jan McBarron said to me in her correspondence with me, when she really understood, do something for somebody else who can do nothing in return for you. There's nothing that will give you the satisfaction that will. Visiting a shut-in, reading a book for the blind in a cassette recording. There's a service there that can really be helpful to people. Go see somebody at the hospital. Take them a cake. Just go listen to some senior citizen. What Jan selected to do was this: teach the functionally illiterate how to read. She takes one adult at a time and she teaches that adult how to read. And when she goes through that process, she said, it is the most exciting, the most rewarding thing you can possibly imagine. And to see the expressions of hope light up and the expressions of delight that they now know what that newspaper is saying, that they can in fact understand things that they never could understand before. It makes you feel good. It does lots for your self-image. Charles Dickens said something that even the individual whose self-image is right on the bottom will have to relate to. He said, "No one is useless in this world who lightens the burden of it to anyone else." Be a quitter. Quit smoking. Quit drinking. Quit swearing. Quit losing your temper. Quit eating too much. When you take charge and break a destructive habit, it does some wonderful, wonderful things for your image. When I lost 37 pounds, taking control of that phase of my life, it made a dramatic difference in my own self-image. In December of 1987, I hurt my back. Wasn't serious. All the doctor said was, you can't jog and do those other things for a couple of months. In the next 2 months, I gained 8 pounds. See, my body retains ice cream. And what happened in a nutshell was, I've got some suits that I cannot wear today because of that. Now, I was able to get into this one again. Last week I could not. I started jogging again last week, and I've taken 5 of those pounds back off, and I'll go ahead and get the rest of them off. But I can tell you with absolute certainty, it does absolutely make a difference when you get rid of some destructive habits. It gives you a feeling of power, a feeling of accomplishment. If you've had a violent temper and you can bring it under control, if you've had some destructive habit and you bring it under control, it really does a lot for your self-image. Quit doing those things that are destructive to you.